Hello and welcome to what will hopefully be the first of a number of tactical breakdown videos from the 186 Squadron. I'm Paul, and here with me is Lloyd.
Hello.
And non-186 member, but very good local player, Ben Barber.
Hello.
And so what we're going to do here in this series of videos is it'll be pre-recorded matches, and then myself, often Lloyd, and always at least one of the two players involved will go through the game, giving a kind of maybe sometimes quite harsh tactical breakdown, asking some difficult questions, and getting the players to explain what they were thinking, why they made the choices they did. And Lloyd or I will give our ill-informed opinion on whether we agree with those choices or not. And hopefully this should be interesting for experienced players and maybe even helpful for sort of newer players to get an idea of what goes through people's heads as they're playing the game. So on that note, we've got a match here between Ben and Dom, who is a member of Firestorm Squadron, another really good local players that have been doing really well recently. This is in the final round of a recent store kit, and this is the top table match. So the winner of this game wins the tournament. And as you can see, Ben is running a Boba non-Lund Zealous Recruit list, which we'll ask him more about in a moment. And Dom is running an extended list. Dom's a sort of experienced in-paces player, running Duchess, Soontir, and Whisper, all pretty loaded out. So Ben, going into this, what were you thinking with the rocks?
So I brought big rocks, but I was running 3 big rocks for a while with a lot of my lists, and then I realized that having one debris in the middle really frees up Slave 1 just in case you do want to blitz it over or clip it. Same with Nomlam as well, it's like just in case. So I take that 1 big debris, 2 big rocks. So if I'm nearly always going first with this list because it's 199.
Mm-hmm.
So big debris right in the middle, and then like, okay, cool. I can move pretty much wherever I want. After that, I want the rocks quite tight. Like I think people think, oh, Nomlam or Slave 1, if they make the rocks tight, I can't make the most of those ships. But Nom's really maneuverable. I think people like when this ship came out in 2nd edition, people were like, oh, the dial, it's awful, it's unusable. It's like it's not as good as it was, but it's not bad. You can make your way through the rocks with that ship. I have seismic charges as well, so I'm like, yes, please, come close.
Yeah, the seismics obviously make a big difference, and that's interesting because I think I'd have been more along the lines of, oh, yeah, spread them out a bit. I've got the big bases, he's got the aces. But I suppose another thing with the tight asteroid cluster is if you get Nom in between them, then you really don't give Dom anywhere to go with his aces. Whereas if he's got a nice open board around Nom, then Nom's ability to block is that much less.
Yeah, I don't want him to have the space to do whatever he wants. I mean, yes, he's very maneuverable, and he can like boost around and chase around rocks faster than I can. I also have an ion cannon, so that's like there were enough factors where I would much rather have. I mean, they're not super packed, super tight, but yeah.
And were you happy with how they ended up here? It looks like, as often happens, you've both kind of been building the same thing, that kind of almost the kind of magic roundabout kind of one in the center.
I mean, it's the classic thing, right, where people say if you're both trying to do the same thing with the rocks, somebody's doing it wrong. And I thought at the time, like, I think Dom's doing it wrong here. Like, I understand why, right? Because he has Whisper and he has these ships that can really dance around, but like just from the way of having run this type of list for quite a while, I'm like, 2 of those rocks are going to be gone anyway. I can funnel with, so yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think the fact that you've got Nom and Boba, well, I mean your entire list, but Nom and Boba specifically moving before most or everything in his list, right? You've got a lot of ability to close those channels down.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I agree. I think probably 1 more rock out of the way for Dom is probably what he wants here, but I don't think it's particularly like massively your favour, but I think
No.
It's definitely a good turn 0 by the looks of it.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that.
So going into this, the way they've set up, so you've got Soontir at the very top, sort of looking there, and I think you've answered the questions you turned away here, but presumably you were never expecting him to do anything but turn Soontir away here?
Yeah, exactly. But I did set up, I mean, I used to set Nom up slightly differently, and then I played against a guy at the System Open who he just like had him on the left and then hard turn right first turn. You get it out the way. Now I can turn left whenever I want, wherever I want.
Sure.
The other thing is if by setting up there, if I did want to just blitz straight across, he can like threaten.
Still gives you the option, yeah.
Yeah, but with Boba, I didn't turn away just in case Soontir does want to come forward, and then I can threaten it.
Because you have one turn as well, right? So if he does bail out, it's easy for you to then cover it.
Yeah.
Or 3-bank into that gap between the sort of the 2 rocks at the top of the board there that he's nearest to.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I turned away with the Zealous Recruit because I don't want to get him caught out on his own. I think that my thinking through a lot of the early stages was I need to keep my guys together as a unit, because if anyone gets caught out, they'll just get picked apart. Like my Zealous Recruit would get ripped apart by these 2 ships at the bottom, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you have an idea of who you're looking at as your first target priority, or is it the kind of list where you're just as and when any shots come available?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter for me. I don't know if like better players are like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go after this guy, but the way aces are, like if you try and chase one down,
yeah, it's just gonna pull you out of position.
I just have to sort of put myself in places where I'm gonna get decent opportunities, I think, and like not overcommit. Like my first few turns here were all about not overcommitting, because as soon as you do, I'm sure he would just rip any of my ships apart. Well, not Boba, but if Boba's really hurt, the other 2 can't win the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there are matchups where, the opponent list has a definite threat. But in this, all of his ships are moving after you. They are all dangerous aces that hit hard. So yeah, I completely agree with the kind of idea that you just shoot what you can rather than having a particular kind of target to go for.
Yeah, any one of his ships could be his end game, right? So like if I kill any 2 of those ships, whatever's left could still win,
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you play like Dom.
Yeah, I've had enough games where I've left a Duchess left at the end, and it's a Duchess with afterburners, right? And they choose when you shoot at it, and it's so frustrating.
I think the other kind of good point you made was I've certainly fallen into the trap in the past of having a sort of AC list, which I suppose yours is, that you've got a couple of blockers, but Boba in some matchups will be ace.
Yeah.
And then playing it as that whatever I'm facing. So for me, it was with the Jedi. I was trying to out ace Imperial aces that were moving after me.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time losing until I played with a friend of ours, Christian, who was like, "What if you just rebel it? What if you just stick them in a box?"
Yeah.
And actually, that evened up the game massively. And I think that's for a lot of players. You have a list, you have a way it wants to fly, but you need to be willing to be flexible if that doesn't work in any given matchup. And being able to identify that to start off with, either you need a really good read of the game or just get those practice reps in where you're like, okay, I've played this matchup before. I know I can't play it how I normally do. This is the new plan for this match.
And so in terms of list, what was your thought behind dropping Fen down to Zealous Recruit?
Oh man, so I've been all over I ran Boba and 2 Skulls at one tournament, and I did really well with that. But then in so many practice games after, I just really struggled against aces. And then I saw Julian did so well with Boba, Fen, Nom. So I ran that a while, and I really, really like that list. But it's just completely lacking in mods because you like those 3 guys on their own.
Stripped right down, right?
Yeah, so no Fearless on Fen, Boba has Slave 1, and Nom has an Iron Cannon. So, and Boba really just improves, I think, exponentially. I think all fire sprays do exponentially once you put more upgrades on them. Fen without Fearless feels terrible, and so this was a mix of like, okay, well, Boba and Nom do really well, and so I was looking around like, okay, what else have people done? And I saw Paul Heaver just took a Zealous. I was like, oh, okay, no, this is perfect. Like it sort of, and now all those aces matches that I kept losing with the different, setups I had. This has now so many more answers for aces. Like Dengar is amazing against aces. Ion Cannon like scares the hell out of aces.
Yeah,
Seismic Charge, like it's just all the pieces now.
Yeah, completely. Because normally, like Nom is the easy thing, right? He gives up MOV. He's fairly predictable where he's going to be. And so Dengar on him just means that aces don't really want to shoot at him. Like there's nothing in Dom's list that really wants to run the risk of taking 2 or so damage trying to kill Nom.
Yeah.
I mean, Whisper is probably the most able to do it, but you definitely don't want to get Whisper nearly halved without having even been shot back at, right?
Yeah. The funny thing about Dengar is like I ran it for a while and like it 50-50 isn't that great when you're only rolling it when you've been shot at. So,
Yeah.
but it's just matchup dependent, right? So for aces, it's great. Like if you
Absolutely
run into
right,
resistance or rebels, you're like, okay, this is not going to do that much.
Yeah, one shield on Braylon is not very valuable, right? But
Yeah.
one damage into Soontir might be everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting looking at these approaches. So you've got, so say Dom is a very experienced ace player, and he's just continuously keeping all of his ships wide and kind of making you commit to one of them or pick a side. And it's interesting watching him do it. And he's using the rocks for coverage every time, so you can't get quickly and sort of behind him or close to him.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to actually watch the way he's doing it. Like I think it's it's a fairly established skill at this stage, but it's interesting to watch, right?
So what I did with Boba at the start is I said I pushed forward, then I won bank, and so I tried to wait as long as possible before I then committed to this side. So by waiting even another turn, like because the way I banked, I was at an angle, I still could have gone left or right. Soontir had to wait even longer before he could come around. And at this angle,
after you kept him out of the fight for another round or two, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, and at this angle, I can still like a hard turn left with all my guys, or I can push up the board. Like so, there's very little space that I can't threaten right now. That was how I was trying to set it up anyway.
And I think you've both actually like. It may look like not a lot has happened. You've kind of stayed on your both stayed kind of on your own board edges. But actually, I think you're both doing a really nice job of keeping your options open. As Lloyd said, Dom has kept his aces threatening from different angles. You're not going to be able to engage all of them at once. You're not going to be able to go for a joust, which would massively favour you over him. But on the flip side, even now, you can still threaten, as you say, every area of the board. Barber and the Fang can hard turn and come up towards Soontir. They can head off towards Whisper or Duchess. So you're both doing a really nice job of that kind of jockeying for position. And in this sort of phase of the game, I think is always really important, obviously. And I think it's about who blinks first. If you have kept your options open when your opponent has closed down his, then you've got a huge advantage, and that you're probably a long way to getting the opening that you want. And so it's a kind of really interesting to watch this phase of the game. And it's where I find against less experienced players that actually, if you were playing against a newer player who hadn't quite picked these things up yet, probably by now they would have committed with at least one of the races, and you'd have an obvious target or a lot of knowledge about what the engagement was going to look like. As it is, because you both know what you're doing, it's still quite open.
Oh, I think these opening turns like are absolutely huge. I mean, some matchups more than others, but I think in this match, like, I think mistakes here basically can cost a game.
So just go back a little bit. The barrel roll from the Fang here, was this intentionally just to slow down Nom? Is that the idea behind that?
It was kind of both, because by barreling there, it keeps the Fang back a little bit, and I can still threaten this bottom part without having to like where I was before. This bottom left corner of the screen, I couldn't really threaten.
Yeah, so it makes Duchess have to be wary. She can't just sweep around that side.
I didn't want to let Duchess have that flank for free.
Sure.
And now I can bank right or turn left next turn. And it has the benefit of Nom slowing down. Like it was a thing I kind of didn't plan for in some of my games. Then you sort of gradually realize, oh, like it's really handy just holding Nom back a little bit.
Yeah, which obviously having that I1 Zealous Recruit allows you to do in a way that Fen didn't.
Oh yeah, having both these guys at I1 is huge. I mean, it seems ridiculous, right? Like I'm going to drop Fen, but I like this version a lot more. As much as I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a Fen Rao player. It's like, well, I do better when he's not on the board. So
you'd like to be a Fen Rao player.
Yeah, I know.
So this barrel roll from Whisper that we had here, does this look like? I think he still has both of his decloaks right and left open. Is that right?
I was not sure. I think when I was looking at it on the day, I was like, I don't think he can decloak right. So it's hard to judge here, but I seem to remember
really tight.
Yeah, it's a really awkward one.
I think the intention of the barrel roll was to keep them open, because obviously without the barrel roll, then decloaking left is either not possible or puts him right behind the rock. So I think that's probably the intention. But yeah, I agree with you. Looking at it on the screen, it doesn't look like barrel rolling right as an option.
So when I saw where Whisper was, I was like, I'm really happy with that, right? Because he's struggling to make the most visibility from there. I can't remember what happens next.
Yeah, he's almost got to come. He's almost got to come back left, hasn't he, with his decloak?
Yeah.
So we get a early shot here from Soontir.
It's like range through a rock.
Range 3. Yeah, maybe just going the rock. I don't know, but doesn't do
it
any
was
damage.
because he's outmaneuver, so I had 3. But yeah, it was like, okay, that's like a pot shot, range 3 through a rock. Who cares?
We got Trader Fire from Whisper.
Yeah, I didn't expect to get a free shot at Whisper here. It took me ages to get used to sharing dice. I'm like, where are my dice? Where are my dice?
And again, no, like limited mods, nothing happening in these early trades of fire.
Yeah.
This often happens, right, with the kind of positioning where that first engagement is maybe a slightly surprise range 3.
Yeah.
I'm always wary of it.
Oh yeah.
A number of times with Fen or similar, I've boosted into that range 3 engagement, thinking I'd chip some damage into the 1 agility ship to do 1 or no damage, and then have Fen take a damage in return, and really regret it. I think a lot of that kind of thinking about damage trades is not purely on numbers, but it's about the meaningful damage. So for Dom there, and it might be that he wasn't expecting that kind of exchange of fire from Boba into Whisper, because they are kind of at the limits of range 3. But I think if it was me, I'd have tried to avoid that.
I think with aces, you just can't be shot at range. Like the way the game is compared to how it used to be in variants, like variants is way higher than first edition, right? So the amount of times somebody's like, as you say, Fen Rao, range 3 through a rock, I've like lost Fen from that. Or in my previous game against Simran, I took a pot shot at Vader, range 3. He takes 2 shields, and that's like, you're way behind then. Even say you do 2 shields to Boba or whatever, I'm like, 2 shields on Vader's massive. So I think those range 3 engagements.
But it is a stealth device Whisper, right? So it has
he's
4
unlikely,
agility, evade, force at that point.
But just talking generally,
yeah. And also it's that kind of thing of, are you going to do meaningful damage? Is the risk worth it? Is the positive side of the risk worth it? And is the 1 damage you're going to do to Boba worth the risk of any damage on Whisper? Like, maybe not. But as you say, with a stealth device Whisper, it's not the craziest decision in the world. So
we had the decloak left here from Whisper, which puts him back where we were, I suppose, roughly expecting her to be. Had you decided that was the only way he could go, Ben? I think you sort of addressed it.
I think I had, yeah. I mean, this turn I was a bit fearful for my Zealous Recruit, because I'm like, I'm not getting into range 1. I just need to threaten with him, and okay, he's going to take some shots. But he's in a really annoying spot now, right? Like if Whisper comes forward, Duchess is going to flank me, but I just have to live with that.
Yeah, and I think it's not terrible, right? Because again, you have to pick something. You have to open an arc a little bit. Like at this stage, he's got Soontir and Duchess on opposite sides of the board, both facing in. So you're going to open a side or a flank to something. And arguably Duchess is the least scary of those.
And with Nom, I just wanted to threaten with the ion cannon. I was like, man, if Soontir comes in here, that ion cannons are pretty dangerous.
And this 4 straight, I think, is interesting. Watching the game live, I was absolutely imagining that you were going to turn in with Boba as well and just turn everything in towards Soontir. But 1, it's incredibly well judged, and we leave up to the audience's imagination as to whether that was luck or skill. But I prefer your decision to mine. I think that the turn in on Soontir was too much of a risk. If Soontir then bails out,
it's like
up
I'm
into the top corner, then you're wasting so many turns. Absolutely. So this although with the boost, Boba ends up in a slightly odd position. You've definitely got more options for next turn. What was the idea behind the boost there?
So, I mean, Duchess is quite unblockable, right? Like in terms of can reposition or whatever. But I was really thinking about the bomb as well. Like, once I can get past these rocks, suddenly like this rock in the debris in the middle now is like a huge problem for him, right? Because next turn I can just drop a seismic. Boba wants to be close, so I can now Duchess is a reroll. My rear arc covers like a lot of all the area that he wants to go into. Like Duchess is moving towards that arc, Soontir is moving towards that arc. Sorry, not Whisper's moving to it. So that was my thinking. It's just like get close, be annoying, and threaten. Right, trading with him at range 2 and range 3, I will just get picked apart. So I needed to like slow roll the opening until there was a moment like this where I was like, and then sudden shift of speed. I think that works a lot really well in this game. Is like changing your rhythm.
Yeah, you want to sort of lull players into thinking that they know kind of what's going on and how you're playing, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. The seismic here threatens not only the debris in the middle, but certainly the rock you're by, and maybe probably not quite that other rock in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah.
So your kind of area of threat there is going to be huge with Boba. Boba's got the hard 2 round that rock maybe doesn't quite fit, but he's certainly got his Talon rolls and his kind of his banks and boosts to get back involved, and obviously the rear arc if he just wants to trundle out of the fight next turn. So now you've got problems.
It's not a good place to be for this turn, but for all the subsequent turns, he's in a really good spot now.
Yeah, and the effect of that is what we see here, which is that Duchess has bumped. Whisper's had to kind of roll out of any good shots rather than take the range 1 trade with the Fang, which is just not in Dom's favour. And Soontir has come in, regretted it because of the iron cannon sitting there, and sort of had to roll away. He does get his free focus there for being just in range 3 of Boba in the bullseye, but sort of is sat there taking a couple of shots and should be okay at range 3 with focus evade, but I think that I vastly prefer this position for you over Dom at the moment.
Yeah, so it feels like you've bullied 2 ships out of the engage and then blocked the 3rd one, right? Like it feels about perfect. Like the only thing that could be better, you say, is Boba having an easier route back into the fight, but the fact that you have the seismic on the way out is taking away a lot of options from Dom.
So we get a pot shot there from Soontir, which did no damage.
Yeah.
And then this is the Boba shot coming in. So good dice with the reroll from Boba.
Force. Oof.
Ends up with 3, and slightly under average there for Dom.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, like, as we all know, I think this is where we start to see the dice where, like, I don't know, just throughout the day, I mean, we talked about this as well. It's like, if you do well in a tournament, you often just need to have good dice plus everything else.
So that was Whisper had no shot, and this is now Duchess shooting into the recruit, right?
Yeah, and I just keep
keep
rolling paint. Yeah, like, I mean, I haven't even spent my focus. It's ridiculous.
But unmodded shots into modded defense.
Yeah,
the fact you haven't spent your focus is nice, but it not a high expected damage there certainly. So the recruit now 3 out of hand, very nice.
Sure, why not?
I mean, leaving Dom having to spend everything to survive, and then so Soontir spent the focus, no damage yet. Soontir spent the focus to survive and has the evade here, and we get the iron cannon range 3. More hits from Ben, and a shocking roll from Dom here. So that's 3 focus and a blank. Whatever he does is taking a damage and an ion, and that's obviously huge in the game. But very unlucky there with the evade token. Incredibly unlucky to get ioned.
I mean, Dom and I talked about this. I can't remember how Soontir works. Can you end up? He could have had focus, right?
He could have had focus if he focused into the roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably spread over the 2. The maths between focus and evade, I think, flips around a kind of 2 to 3 evade dice mark. If you're rolling 3 or more, then focus is better. If you're rolling 2, then evade is better.
I think it's 4. I think it's when you go to 4 that focus is just definitely better. And he's getting shot twice, right? So
yeah, at range 3. So
it's not like that's an obvious mistake, because like focus evade is like, oh, brilliant. But if if it was like a really like careful, thoughtful moment, you'd be like, actually, double focus is probably better here, because taking damage is one thing. Taking an ion, like,
yeah, that's really crippling. I mean, already it's looking like Dom is going to need to try and win this with 2 ships rather than 3. You can't see. We've already spoken about the seismic charge coming up. You can't see Soontir making out of here.
Yeah.
Out of interest, how many times did you intentionally don't imagine Nom take a seismic charge damage? Because I feel like he wants to be in and around the fight quite often. So do you find that he takes quite a few seismic charges, or?
Yes, he did in my previous game as well. Like in this case, I mean, it's obvious, right? Trading a shield for Nom for a damage on Soontir is just very obvious. In other cases, I've done it in a time where I've threatened with the seismic and I've only damaged Nom. And I'm like, oh, that didn't feel good. But still,
but even
you have
then,
to take those gambles, I think.
Yeah, and even then, works, right? It can be huge.
Yeah, the one I did in my previous game, it was like, okay, I'm going to seismic here. If I hit Vader with this seismic, he's halved. In the end, I only take a shield on Nom, but it meant that's worth the risk, you know. Like.
So just before we flip dials here, are you basically just going for the kill shot on Soontir here, presumably?
Yes, absolutely. Although I wasn't willing to trade too much my Fang for it. I'm like, Nom can take the seismic. Absolutely. And I was thinking about like, oh, well, do I 2-bank boost around with the Fang, block Soontir, etc., but I wasn't willing to just throw away my Zealous Recruit for that. I felt like the seismic plus a range 1 ion here with Nom was enough to finish Soontir off. So I think I do a 3 forward with the Fangs. Like, okay, the Fang's just gonna get ready for the
play safe
following turns. Yeah.
So Soontir at this point has 2 health, right?
So here's where I did focus rotate. Good. I thought I was like, did I cheat here? No. There's definitely, I mentioned this before we talked as well. Like, there's definitely a couple of mistakes I make, which I apologize to Dom for, because I was like, there's a couple of times where it really looks like I'm just trying to cheat hard, but I was so tired. I made like odd mistakes. But
yeah, it's round 5 as well. I think you mentioned at the start, but it was a long day and it was only a casual tournament, so people aren't necessarily like in the best headspace and in full like tournament mode. But yeah, I think what you see the more you watch stream games is a lot of people make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
It's just part of the game, right? It just happens.
Yeah, and Dom's really good about that sort of stuff.
I think Dom cheats too, then.
So yeah, I just 3 forward boost out with the Fang. It's like he's gonna get shot by Soontir, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean he's not spending anything, right, with Soontir.
Yeah. And now Boba, like I said before, now this rock is another problem for them for the next turn.
Yeah.
And talk me through the link into rotate from Nom, because with his, it looks to me, I mean only obviously on the camera, but it looks to me like Soontir with the ion is going to be in your front arc.
I wasn't entirely sure. I don't know if I just didn't trust myself. I can't remember what it was exactly. Because
so is that just in case he's not?
Yeah, like I was looking at it for quite a while, and I feel like when you look at it here, it seems really obvious. But you know, sometimes you sort of maybe you look at something too hard and you then don't trust it anymore.
Yeah, and it's also about how important the decision is, right? Like it's
huge, right?
It's going to be so stupid if you let him slip out of arc here. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, being stressed on this side of the board is bad, right? Because getting back in is going to take ages. But if it kills Soontir, it seems obvious.
It's the tiny things. Right?
I'm sorry, Con. You need 1 damage into Soontir to kill him because the seismic's going to take 1 as well.
Yeah. So now this is the greatest seismic of my life because. I mean, I don't know if he forgot it or because it seems like an obvious one, but like to get all 3, I just thought it would get Soontir, but all 3 aces is.
I don't know how easy it was for them to get out of it.
Not very.
And I think, I mean, possibly with Whisper and Duchess, he could have disengaged harder and sort of and made it out. But obviously Soontir was always taking it. It's interesting, the small decisions. So I agree with you. I think if you're not sure, then the rotate is definitely the way forward. But we can see actually, with the benefit of hindsight, how it's ended up. Soontir is bang. He was all going to be in your arc all day, and as you say, you've now stressed on the turning the wrong way.
Yeah, it's bad.
I wonder if that's going to cause problems for Nom sort of in future turns. So get a bit of a pro judge action coming in now. See whether Soontir can. I think Dom expecting to lose Soontir here, but is hoping that he will at least do some damage before he goes.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, looking back, I'm like, oh, I'll keep my Fang away from the bomb. It's like, by doing that, I've maybe given up a range to outmaneuver. It's like literally the worst place I could be.
Yeah. So, whereas if you just turned in, you've got that more guarantee of killing him. Yeah, that's reasonable. Outmaneuver is a tricky card, right? It's becoming more popular, so I think we'll all get more used to it. But it changes your decision making hugely. Just more bad dice from Dom, the one hit, the one evade.
Yep. I mean, he wants to be trading for at least something, so like I think he definitely deserved more there.
Yeah, I think he's probably only averaging one, right? Because he's definitely not spending.
Yeah, I was going to say that exact thing. Averages hit, focus, blank, and then you've got to hope against hope that Soontir has the opportunity to live here. And I agree with you, Lloyd. I don't think you spend the focus. So one is. It always feels worse when the Fang doesn't even have to spend the token to survive, but actually that's meaningless in this stage because he's not using that focus for anything else this turn.
And in this instance, you're shooting into Duchess, is that right, with Boba?
Yeah.
And is that just because like no obstruction?
Well, it's just the best shot I have, right? Like I think the other shots are stealth device, whisper. I don't know if like the other shots are just not worth it. I really hate it when you like, oh, if this shot hits, it'll kill him.
Yeah.
But like the amount of time,
1 in a million.
it's like, well, if you look at the odds, it's just a wasted shot. So yes, he died, but I need to start doing damage elsewhere as well.
So stealth device is down now on whisper because of the bomb as well, right? Which is just another.
No, I think if it's like first edition, stealth device you'd only lose stealth device if you take damage during an attack.
No, it's just after you suffer damage.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, shows
in fact, Dom has, I think, flipped the charge on his card as well.
Okay. And just to jump back there, just to keep everyone up to date with what's going on. So that decision from Ben to shoot Duchess did pay off. And here comes the shot on Soontir.
That's three focuses.
3 hits. Yeah, 3 hits from the iron cannon. And too many blanks there from Dom.
Yeah, needed everything, right? And didn't get it.
And that's the final damage. And Soontir's off the board. So now you're sitting in a really good position. You've got Whisper having taken 1 damage from the bomb, as you correctly point out, with the stealth device down. That shot from Duchess having done damage, so Duchess took 2 that round, 1 from the bomb, and a crit that snuck through from Boba's shot, rolling blanks on his defense dice there and just spending the evade to not take 2. For 1 damage in return on Nom Lum.
Boba's down to 2 shields as well. Like all these pot shots.
Yeah, Boba took maybe a couple there, I think, through the rock from Whisper. But you're looking at
an exceptional trade, right?
Oh yeah, like I've traded 3 health for 3 health. No, 3 health on Soontir and 2 on Duchess.
And so again here, looking at this situation, just before he decloaks with Whisper, are you expecting him to be far enough away from the rock that you don't seismic this turn?
It's one of these ones where I was looking at, okay, when am I going to have another good opportunity to drop a seismic? I can't see one coming soon. I'm just going to drop it and threaten it. I think this was long enough ago that I was pretty sure I'd drop it here.
Sure.
But yeah, I didn't see a good reason to hold it anymore. Like Proton's different, right? Because it's easy to get to a really good situation. But here I'm like, okay, especially because Boba's got to turn around soon. So if I drop it, I've got a ton of space to then go wherever I want when I've turned around.
No, absolutely.
That's what I really love about seismics with Boba as well. Is like, okay, cool. Now the board is very spacious for me.
And I think that's absolutely correct. Like and that kind of thinking it through and realizing the difference. Like certainly with protons, you almost never want to drop that last proton because the threat of it happening is almost always more effective than the actual 1 crit you're going to get out of it. It's better to have 5 turns of your opponent making suboptimal maneuver choices rather than 1 crit on them. But yeah, the seismic is a completely different situation, and I think like Boba may never go near any of these rocks again.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where the horror of Nom being stressed, like I felt it for so much of the rest of the game. Because like, how am I gonna de-stress? I can't remember if a 1 forward is fine on this rock. I also can't remember why I barreled here. I think it might have been to.
You perhaps making space for Nom next turn.
I think that was it. Yeah.
Because I think if you stayed where you are, then either Nom, they're just in each other's way basically.
Yes, I think there was definitely some thought behind it, but like gives my Fang options strangely. Like, it looks so close to the rock, but yeah.
So yeah, because I think from this stage your jump master can basically only 1 bank to the right.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot more of his style he can choose to do, right? So yeah, you're now in right turn hell for a couple of turns.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a really important sort of stage of the game for any player. So there's been a major change in the game state in both directions. So Dom definitely needs to reassess to work out where the win comes from here. He needs to be aware of how many points he is down, what each bit of Ben's list is. And as we were saying, for both these ships, shooting at non-lum with Dengar crew is a bit of a nightmare. So I think my advice to any player after something happens, ship dies, something takes more damage than you were expecting it to, some major shift, certainly if points are scored, just take a moment, reassess, and work out where the win comes from. And that doesn't only apply to Dom, that applies to Ben as well. So Ben, you're here, you're doing well, you're in a good situation. Your kind of thought process from now on should be, how do I not mess this up? What series of choices result in me throwing away this amazing lead that I've given myself?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about lists before as well. The hull upgrade on Boba is just so huge, like in basically nearly all my games, because he is so expensive when you put stuff on him. So that hull upgrade that takes into, you need to do 6 to half him, right, instead. And so he holds on to a ton of points. Nom dies quite easily, but that's only 50 points.
Yeah, he's so cheap it almost doesn't matter, right? You trade him for anything, or sometimes even just a bit of board control.
Oh yeah.
So we're seeing the problem that Nom causes with Dengar crew now. So that was just a shot into Nom from Duchess, triggered Nom's ability to rotate his arc to the rear. Duchess rolled, I think, 2 hits and a focus, or maybe even 3 hits. No, just the 2 hits and a focus.
There's me rolling more paint.
Yeah. So that was Nom rolling 2 hits. Duchess rolling 2 hits and a focus there. Electing not to spend the focus, keep it for defense, I think it's a sensible decision. And Ben getting 2 natty evades to take no damage on Nom. It's obviously Nom is a problem. Nom is a bigger problem when he doesn't take any damage.
Yeah.
Allowing him to do 2 things: trigger Dengar and strip the token from Duchess. Slight misplay there, and Ben rolled for Dengar anyway, but it didn't have an effect, so no harm done. And then with the return fire, threatened damage, but actually on this occasion Duchess got away with it and didn't take anything. But the power of Nom is there. A ship that would normally be looking at as easy points. We're talking about how does Dom win the game? Oh well, I'll just go and kill Nom and get those 50 points. That's not a problem. Actually, for every damage you do to him, you get take a damage back, and with lightweight aces, you cannot take that trade. So I think at this point, Dom is, that interaction. Dom realizes that Nom is not part of how he wins the game. And I think he's sort of aware that he needs to get points off the other 2 ships.
I think if he can... No, go ahead, please.
For you in this situation, so you've got, obviously, Nom is going to be doing not very much for a few turns. The Fang potentially can turn back in again and threaten Duchess. Are you looking with Boba to come steaming in and threaten Duchess, or are you trying to keep Whisper occupied?
I super don't remember, so let's see what I do.
Well, I think it's a really interesting question. I think what I would have done here with Boba is sort of use Slave 1. I think if you or not even Slave 1, but just sort of use the information you're given by Whisper decloaking. So Whisper has just decloaked to the right. For me, the one bank left with Boba allows you to, if Whisper comes forward, just stay there, threaten the block. Or if Whisper does this, then you can boost around in front of him again, threaten the block, threaten the wave one change. Now, whether that would have worked or not, I don't know. Because,
I think the thing, if you do that, you've just given up your flank to Whisper, right? Like, so you're saying one bank left.
One bank left and then turn in. There's I think how I would have played it. You elect to go for the kill on Duchess, and I don't think that's the wrong decision by any stretch of imagination. It's just a different decision, but it shows the different approaches. I think I'd have been hoping to keep Whisper engaged with Boba and with the other two sort of finishing off Duchess, but
I think
I look at it that he's only got, from where he is roughly, Duchess is possibly turning into Boba's face, which Duchess doesn't really want to do, or has a shot into Nom, which you've already discussed as a bad option for him, or has a long range shot into a Fang through a rock. So I think by bringing Boba in, it just gives Duchess more problems, and Duchess is already halved at this point, right? So is the easiest thing to get off the table. And if you can get to an end game where you have 3 or 2.5 ships against Whisper, then that's a lot harder for Whisper.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree at all. I don't think either is a bad choice. I think my worry with that would have been if Duchess had turned out there and run, do you then give Whisper a couple of turns of firing to the side of Boba, getting free damage, whilst you go to chase down an already limping ship, which should be easy to deal with whenever it does come back into the fight. But as we can see here, the aggressive decision from Dom not quite paying off. It ends up sat in front of Boba. He's explaining here that what he was hoping to be able to do was to boost through that gap.
That would have been amazing.
Boost right in between the two ships, and he wasn't far off it. And obviously with the that was judging it after the aileron bank and the 3 straightforward. So not super disappointing. Like you get the judgment of that sort of slightly off. But as we've got Duchess in a horrible position. Your Fang out of the fight for a couple of turns. Nom stressed still, but Duchess in at range 1 where she doesn't want to be.
Oh, Nom's already rotated, right? So there's not a lot of reason not to take that shot.
Absolutely.
Oh I'm already facing that way. Yeah.
But again, unfortunately, slightly below average attack dice into slightly above average defense dice equals no damage for Dom.
I think Nom was just rolling paint all day. It was amazing.
This is Whisper into Boba here. There we got 3 hits into 2 evades.
So what people will learn from this video, I think, is just roll loads of paint because
just roll evades.
Yeah.
Oh, apologies. I had those shots the wrong way around. That was
Nom shooting back at Duchess with Dengar.
No, it was
Duchess shot into Nom.
Duchess shooting into Nom. Does 1 damage because of the natty evades, and then takes 1 back from Dengar, and that's just not a sustainable trade.
So the thing I was thinking about. Sorry, go ahead.
I think to the point where if you are an ace player and you're running an aces lists, I think at the moment you need to be thinking about having a solution or at least a game plan versus lists with this Nom build in them, because shooting him is not an answer.
Yeah, I think it's worth obviously pointing out that it was an extended tournament, but quite a few people brought hyperspace lists as. Ben, I think everything in yours is, right? Dengar Gunner.
This is a hyperspace, yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how there are tools, even in hyperspace, that work really well against an extended aces list.
Yes.
But then I think we've also seen, with the exception probably of Ollie's run at Worlds, it's really hard for aces to sustain variance on their side the whole way through a tournament.
Yeah.
Right? They can be absolutely incredible in individual games, and they can bid so hard that they can always have the choice of initiative. But every now and then they just have those games, like we've seen in parts of it here, not to take anything away from your flying, Ben, but you do occasionally get those games where just nothing goes the way you want.
Oh, yeah.
And they lose hard when they do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another, like we talked about Fen before, like the amount of times I've just lost Fen for absolutely nothing. I'm like, well, at least with this list, there's nothing here you're going to lose for nothing. I think like the Zealous Recruit can, but he usually lives because you really don't want to spend your time trying to kill that Zealous Recruit because like Nom and Boba just do whatever they want.
Yeah, he's not a valuable target, right? Nom has so much control, and Barber is such an endgame piece.
And this is kind of like in this situation, because I was so far ahead, I didn't really feel like I needed to force it anymore, which I think is why the Zealous Recruit ended up over there. It's like, okay, I don't need to try and overcommit in any way. Let's just sort of reposition him and come back in. I don't think I brought him back in very well over time, but
that's a really sensible decision as well, right? Because how you lose the game is by making either really dumb choices and or getting really bad dice. So if, for instance, you had Talon rolled the Zealous Recruit here to kind of get him back in the fight quicker, to get shots on Duchess, now that might have been fine, and you might have won the game quicker. But winning the game quickly or slowly is still winning the game. And what could have happened is that you Talon roll him and Duchess one-shots him. And all of a sudden, Whisper's gone from a situation where it looks looking like in a couple of turns, Whisper's on his own, versus an entire list to actually only needing to half Boba and then run away to win. So it's kind of, this game's about always thinking through those decisions, making sensible choices. And I think the choice to disengage with the Fang there was definitely the sensible one given the game state.
Yeah, so I was boosting around in case, because Duchess, if you look at what Duchess is, if I stayed where I was, he gets a very easy flank on me. So by boosting, he's going to struggle to get the flank, or he's going to have to spend afterbite. Like, it's a hard position for him to get my Fang from. And now later, if I want to turn in, that's easy to do.
And you've got that too hard to get back through that gap.
Yeah.
So you've spread a nice net here for Duchess, with the rear arcs of Boba and Nom. Dom, I think, at the time was explaining sort of just a bit of a brain fade moment here, and one straight into one straight and just leaves Duchess sort of sat there in trouble. I think he was again kind of hoping that the barrel roll forward here would get out of arc, but realizes it just doesn't, and kind of has to end up sat there at range one, crossing his fingers. Barber taking a proton bomb here, but I think for the position, and given that you've still got shields, it's not something you need to be too worried about.
I'm pretty sure at this point I was like, oh, I forgot you had. It's the classic. I forgot you had bombs. Yeah. But it's a shield on Boba, so it's not the worst. But I mean, he's so good at like chasing me down and not getting shot back. And we talked about this before, but like Nom's threatening Duchess brilliantly here, but again, he's like turning right the whole time now. Like getting shots on Whisper it's gonna be a long time.
So if you're running this list again, is there anything you would change and do differently to it?
I wouldn't change the list. I think this list is pretty much perfect with these pieces, because there's nothing you drop on. Like I wouldn't drop any of those things on Boba. Like you could put Fearless on him, obviously. You drop the cybernetic. In terms of things I would do differently, the obvious one is not stressing. Not like if Nom's not stressed earlier, then it's easier for him to do. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter right now, right? Because like his arc is a threat anyway, so it wasn't too much of a mistake. It's hard to say with this match, right? Because the opening just went so well that Duchess is gone now, so I think this match was basically down to that one, like that the dice getting Soontir then, and then that opening. Like I think I engaged really nicely, and after that you just have to not make stupid mistakes. So
and I think that Dom was so far behind after that opening that you just needed to play kind of a solid steady game, and you've done that. Being hypercritical, getting Nom stress meant that he's sort of been in a slightly suboptimal position. It's ended up working okay versus Duchess, but he's even now still sort of not quite where you want him to be. You probably want him to be maybe 45 degrees facing towards the bottom edge of the board here.
I have no way of turning him around, right? Like, yeah.
So just for a sort of damage recap on that, obviously people can see the stats, but Dom finally getting some actual just normal attack damage through on Boba there, and Boba taking the shield from a proton bomb, and then another one from Whisper's attack. even that maybe you could have sort of hoped for more, given that he was double modded, but I think only ending up with the 2 hits there to the 1 evade. And now it's from this point on, you must just be thinking this is kind of clean up. Were you worried? Were you concerned, or do you kind of think you had this in the bag?
I mean, I definitely thought it should be a win, but like Dom's such a good player, and I'm like, one of the things I'm not brilliant at is like, good ace players. I'm not like, okay, well he's going to do this because that's the optimal. Like I can't. My brain doesn't think like that, so I just try and like, okay, cover quite broad arcs. Like threat, I kind of look at zones of the board and like, okay, well I just got to threaten this zone and not give it up for free. So here's me struggling to get Nom. I was like, okay, well I guess I'll take the stress, but it's like now I'm gonna have to clear that and turn again. It's outrageous.
Yeah, so this is what I was thinking about when we were looking at changes to the list, because a contraband on Nom probably helps, but you have to drop something to be able to fit it in, right? Because you're 199, and what on earth are you dropping to try and find it, right? So
yeah, so if you don't have Maul on Boba, then I'm like, okay, I only feel like I really want contraband on Boba when I have Maul, because it means those times when you like, oh man, I really have to get the stress from
regenerating the force.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the list is like really tight as it is. So the reason I boost here is if you look at, it's just broadened my arc even further. Obviously, I'd much rather have the focus. I think this is the lock that I put on Whisper ages ago, and I've carried it around with me.
Yeah, I think
and then Don
agreed
said
at the
you
time.
spent it, but I can't remember. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think later I had spent it, but
I think at this point you'd taken it towards the beginning of the game, hadn't spent it, and it just been sort of floating around in the middle of the board.
I took that lock when I did the contraband talon roll on the bottom right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been following me rather than him.
So range 3 shots here from Boba, spending that lock for 3 hits.
Yes. So this is where I spent it, and I tried to put it back later. So that was why I was like, yeah, I'm the filthiest
and
player.
Finally, some decent dice from Dom. Again,
Yes.
the natural 3 evades, doesn't have to spend any tokens.
I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Like
to fire back.
Dice will even out, but like it's too late for them to even out. Like
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a 77-point Whisper, right? So it can do some damage and it can burn things down, but it feels like it's just too much Boba for it to deal with at the moment.
Let's not forget though that 5th brother is absolutely terrifying. Like
I suppose, yeah, once shields go down, right, it starts.
Especially at this point, and that's just what's happened here. So, Dom using the combination of the passive senses target lock there and 5th brother to chip a fuel leak into Boba, which not as bad as direct hit, but with 5th brother, you're going to expect that's going to trigger at some point.
Yeah.
So Lloyd, obviously Ben was in the game, and I've watched this back to kind of get the overlay sorted out. From your point of view, as Dom here, what do you do? Is there a way for Dom to win? Is there a way back into the match?
I mean, there definitely is, and I think annoyingly, right, the easy things to kill would still be Nom, which you still don't want to shoot at. So the fact that Boba's now taken a fuel leak and has the damage card on him, I think he's also the biggest threat to you, because he's the biggest gun, he's the most reliable, and he's the most points. So I think you have to chase Boba and burn him down and just try and dodge everything else in the process. So I was trying to work out here where Whisper would be going. So Nom is still just out of the fight, right? Nom is just going to one bank around. If I'm running Whisper, I think I'm probably looking at a decloak left to try and, again, keep shots on Boba. You have to, at this stage, just be trading shots with Boba. If I'm Ben and running Boba, I'm trying to probably get out of the way and clear my fuel leak this turn, because that's just, that's going to add up quickly. Right? Cause a lot of problems for you. Yeah.
And that's half point. If I take one more, that's half points.
Exactly right. And so you need to threaten Whisper with the Fang, I think, while Boba gets away and fixes that fuel leak. And I mean, Nom is still just going to be able to fight next turn again, right? Because he's just one banking. So as much as I like the idea of 2 turning right with Boba, I think I actually 2 turn left with him and bring him out that way, because that brings the fight back towards where Nom's going to be.
That's smart.
So you maybe boost out this turn. It's difficult, right? Because the 1 turn from Whisper fits. 1 turn left is bold. I don't think that's what Dom's doing.
That'd be an outrageous call, right? Like,
wouldn't it, right?
You just turn your back to the Fang. Like
yeah.
Mm.
So I think, especially since you're covering with the Fang, I'm inclined to turn Boba left, fix that fuel leak. I appreciate I didn't really answer your question of what Whisper would do. But you have to just be trying to get shots, and you're ignoring the Fang until Boba's dealt with, and then you take the Fang out afterwards, and you just try not to get ionized by Nom in the process.
So yeah, there's a couple of things happening here on this turn. I agree with you. I think to talk about what's going on now, so Ben has one straighted rather than one banked Nom, and I feel free to disagree with me, Ben, here, but I think that during this phase of the game, I think you were too focused on getting Nom a shot every turn rather than properly getting him back into the fight.
Yeah, I think the fuel leak probably panicked me, and I'm like, it's just like, I look at a player like Dom, and it's like, oh, these players are so good. I'm like, okay, I can't let up at all. And obviously, I mean, when I look at back, I'm like, why am I barrel rolling there? It's outrageous. I think I also maybe just forgot my arc is that way or this and that. So I think these next few turns I just played really badly, honestly. Like, I mean, the move that Lloyd talks about, if you look at it now, it's like, yeah, that's a really obvious move, right? You go left around the rock here. I mean, where I've put Boba is like, okay, cool. He's got a shot at me, but it's going to be through a rock. If he wants to take it, he's got to come towards the Fang. So that all makes sense. But yeah, those two moves are not optimal for sure.
It's easier, of course, in hindsight, not in round 5 of a long day, though, right?
Yeah.
And so here, Boba is just out of range, measured along the arc. I think he's sort of at range 3, but not at range 3 in arc.
I think this needed a peak call. I can't remember.
Yeah, but Whisper in a slightly tricky situation. Now, Whisper at this stage I don't think there's a way for him to get out of this range 1 shot from the Fang, and unfortunately, he does sort of need to just cross his fingers and hope the dice bail him out at some point. But you've got to be a bit worried here. 2 agility, although with good defensive mods, and looking at a 4 dice shot coming in. No fearless on the Zealous because of points, and it doesn't have any PT, and so maybe he could get away with this. I think going back to what you're saying about Whisper sort of having to burn Boba down, I think that's correct. I think the one alternative you might have is he may decide, okay, well, I've probably scared Boba out the fight here. He's going to run. He's going to try and preserve half points. So maybe you have an opportunity to quickly deal with the Zealous Recruit, either ideally kill it or half it, which you're going to need to do at some point anyway. So I think the obvious target is sometimes not the best one, and sometimes gives you an opportunity to kind of switch targets and surprise someone. So look at these shots coming in.
This
is the
shots.
Range.
Yeah. Actually, go on, do that first. I'll come back to that.
This is the range 1 from Whisper. Spends the lock and ends up with 4 hits.
Only takes 1 because of
rolls 2 evades, adds the other with a Concord, and takes the 1 crit. But starting to get towards what he needs to do, but he really needs to take no damage here. And the Zealous Recruit obliging, only rolling the 2 hits there. Dom is looking at focus blank, so would need to spend both to take no damage, and decides to do so, which I think is the correct call, because you need to keep Whisper as far above half as possible. And so actually other than the fact he can't cloak, a reasonable turn for Dom there.
Yeah.
He's 1 more damage. He's 1 damage off half on the Zealous. He is 1 damage off half on Boba, and so he's 2 damage from being ahead on points at this point. So even though it looks terrible, and I'm still by no stretch of imagination saying that Dom is in a good position,
no,
it's not lost.
Absolutely, and that's what I was like. You can't underestimate the situation, right?
No, absolutely. And going back to Nom, so Nom, the barrel roll here is interesting, right? Because it's stressing yourself again has taken you out of the fight for another turn.
Oh, it was.
Had you 1 banked in, the 1 bank again, just following round, you start to then get behind Whisper.
It's an outrageous decision. I
can't
answer for it.
What I was looking at was whether you could have just rotated, and of course, the jump can only rotate its arc by stressing itself. It can only link to it, right? So you couldn't have even just stayed where you were and rotated and just given yourself more options.
It's a really, really, really odd. I mean, I guess that balances things somehow. I don't know, but it's so odd.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually what would have been really interesting, so having gone the way you did with Boba, the 1 forward from Nom, I'm trying to think where it ended up. You could have just Talon rolled, slooped this turn with it.
Yeah.
And then it'd be back in the fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, as you say, right, having said at the start the dial isn't that bad, you're now spending 6 or 7 rounds managing the dial.
Yeah, but only because of my own idiocy, right? Like it's like as you say, managing is a good way to put it, because if you manage the dial well, it's not that bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think idiocy is overstating it. You're being a bit hard on yourself, but yeah, there's
hyperbole, but yeah.
There were better ways of getting back involved. That's to say, as Lloyd says, if you're not stressed here, you can sleep. Actually, 2 turns back when you hard turned right, I think you had space to hard turn left. You'd have jammed yourself up against the board edge, but as Lloyd was saying, with the kind of too hard left with Boba of drawing everything back into the same area of the board, I think that was the better play. Then you end up with all of your ships heading in the same direction.
See, this point's not so bad because the rear arc is covering
It's back in play,
it's 2 dice, but I mean, second edition, 2 dice isn't nothing.
Yeah, if it makes Whisper spend her evade token, then it's massive, right? Because then she's predictable again.
And the Zealous Recruit here in a nice position to sort of almost impossible for Dom to get shots here. He doesn't have the one straightforward. He's not got a short enough move, so he's either bumping or even worse, flying over the top to give the Zealous Recruit shots.
Yeah, with my taking that whole breach, I was like, ugh, that's pretty horrible. So just stay as close as I can to him. Just be annoying, right? But again, he still manages to find an angle where I don't have a shot.
Nice, really nice 3 bank there.
Yeah, very clever.
Difficult to see on stream whether he's out of Boba's arc, but almost whatever. The barrel roll puts him back into the arc of the Zealous, so he has to sort of sit there and stay still.
So yeah, like just talking, positionally, like the past few turns, I put myself in a terrible position where he now is shooting Boba for free. Nom's doing nothing. The Fangs, I mean,
I think Boba is just, unfortunately for Dom, Boba has got the shot here.
Yeah.
So 2 hits into blanks there.
So that's half, right?
And this is, and with a crit. And so a number of things happen here that really looked like they put the tin lid on the game. So single modded shot from Boba puts 2 damage into Whisper, halves him. All of a sudden, he's got to kill too much of your stuff to possibly have a chance of winning. And to add insult to injury, the crit he gets is a wounded pilot, which I, prior to this game, hadn't really appreciated how awful that is for passive sensors Whisper.
Yeah.
So allow me, if you will, to list off the times that can trigger. After Whisper declicks, if he takes the evade, he may get stressed before he has moved, with no way of knowing whether he will or won't get stressed. If he passive senses, he might get stressed when he passive senses. If he gets stressed when he passive senses, he cannot do either of the actions when the passive senses untriggers. If he doesn't get stressed, he can do either of the actions, but they might also end up stressing him out. So Dom here has gone from a position of getting the opportunity to half Boba and be only 1 damage off winning the game, or being in a leading position, should I say, to having Whisper halved, getting a stress when his passive sense is triggered, and to add insult to injury, not even doing the final damage to Boba to half him. That's a pretty catastrophic turn of events. And I think at this point, whilst we've been sort of advocating your game, knowing what your win condition is and working towards it, you could forgive Dom at this point for giving up. I think this has become an insurmountable task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think at this point, let's just segue very quickly and tell me a little bit about your paint job on your Fang that you've got here, because I know we spoke about this the other day.
Yeah, it doesn't show up so much on here, but it's based on, oh god, what's the show?
The Razorback, right, from Expanse.
Yeah. I really like painting Fangs because it's like a really flat surface for just doing freehand stuff. The Nom as well. Like I like these ships that have big clean surfaces that you can go to town on. So painting white took a bit of work because I hadn't done that before. But yeah, grey. It's grey. Don't paint white. Paint grey. Like just a really light grey.
But yeah, it's a beautiful paint job if anyone gets a chance to. Maybe if you can get a picture across Paul, he can add in at the end of the video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe just link to it. But yeah.
So I think in future I'll pay attention and get players to maybe hold the ships up before or after if they're particularly nice looking.
So this is this is another time where I'm like, okay, barrel rolls get me back in quicker, and it's like that's not the case at all, right? If I just turn, because doing the
I
barrel roll
think
there, yeah. So my brain
again
just stopped
stressed
working.
again for no reason. But at the end of the 5th round, in
Oh,
a
I know,
game
I know.
state that is, you know, you would have to try very hard at this point to lose this game. And I think that at this stage, that's kind of all forgivable stuff. You guys, I think on the video won't be able to hear the table audio, but I've got to mention there's a lovely back and forth. Both of you were really having fun at this point. Dom describing exactly how you were going to fly your ships off the board to give him the win. And you commenting that really you couldn't cope with playing against players who were able to predict your moves so well. I thought it was really lovely and really nice, especially, you know, on the final table, a game that sort of mattered for the tournament win. It was nice to see you guys both being so friendly and having such a nice time.
Yeah, it's always nice. I think, like, God, everyone in our area, like, nice people to play with, just generally. I mean, that's X-Wing, right? Like,
yeah, and I think it does. And we all have our moments of sort of, you know, when it gets to us. But I think what you're looking for is ideally people to kind of never be snappy, but at least if they do get a bit salty in a moment of sort of heightened drama or bad luck, that they kind of are able to calm themselves down and wind it back. And I think locally we've got that certainly. There's no one who's sort of consistently unpleasant to play against.
So
oh, go on.
No, please go.
I was assuming there was a dig there that was about to come at somebody. I was going to let that happen first. Just as a final point in the tournament, so you teched, it seems like relatively heavily against aces with this list. But Boba is an incredible toolbox piece, obviously.
Yeah.
What were the other matches you played, or what was the hardest list you had to come up against during the day?
Oh, I mean, so this goes back to, like I was saying before, is like it felt like a really lucky day, right? Like my dice were pretty good consistently, and actually, if I look at the matchups I had, they were pretty good. So my first opponent basically hadn't played much X-Wing at all. So it's good that we're getting new players in, but he was running quite a scary list for the. I think the matchup is really scary for this type of list. It's like it was Luke and I think 10 or like one of the good B-wings and Jack and a generic X-Wing. So probably not the most efficient version of that type of list, but that's still quite scary, right? And Nom doesn't have a high damage output, so like if you eye on an X-Wing, it's like, who cares, you know? The Zealous Recruit can get eaten up by those sorts of lists. And Boba, the whole point of Boba, and this is the sort of thing with Boba Fett, you kind of want to blitz things quickly, and so that was quite a scary matchup. But again, my opponent was quite inexperienced. The next match was an unusual list. I think this tournament people take like the trail sorts of lists. So there's a friend of mine running Lando in the Falcon and Lebo, you know, in the Y. I don't even know what that ship's called.
Wow, that is an unusual list.
Yeah.
YT2400.
YT2400, yeah.
So scary for the Fang, but I mean, I think that's just this was a pretty horrible matchup for him. I won the bid, so I can do whatever I want. Again, talking more about luck, my third game was against Boba Guri, which I think it's a really interesting matchup, right? Because the ion cannon is a huge threat, but that they're both the aces, but they're both tough aces. But he had a really expensive Boba Guri, so somehow I was moving second, so my Boba was able to avoid really bad threats.
And Slave 1 at that point becomes massive in that game.
Oh,
right?
I'm like, oh man, just drop one thing on your list and I'm in a lot of trouble. That was actually really close though in the end, so credit to him. And then my fourth game was more Imperial Aces against Simran, who's excellent and usually beats me.
Simran usually beats everyone, so.
But I got a couple of turns where I eye on Duchess, and then later I eye on Soontir. It was the one where I had to stray 2 shields into
Vader that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So it was a swingy game. Like I was like, oh man, that really puts me ahead. That feels good. And then later I was like, things are falling apart, but scraped it at the end. So it was a really good test for me because I've talked to Lloyd a lot about this. Like, aces is my biggest weakness. Sorry, playing against them. Like, I think, and to take this list, which is different to what I would normally have taken, and do really well against. Okay, so I think that says a lot about this list, you know.
But also, I think if you've like the first step in kind of getting better against that weak matchup is to identify it, right? So if you don't realize that you struggle versus aces, then you're never going to get better. But you have realized, and by the looks of it, and by the sounds of your tournament, you have got better. So
yeah, I think
it's not a done deal. It's not that you'll never lose to aces again. But you've identified an issue and you've gone out and specifically tried to solve it, both with your list choices, which have worked massively, and with the way you approach it. And I think that's really paid off. And I think by the sounds of things, that's why you look like you're going to win this tournament. I think at this point there's no point in the pretense anymore. I think we can give you the game. So going on from that, so just to sort of go back to the game and round it out, Dom actually here still making sensible choices, still playing properly and doing his best. The dice have not helped. He's been really unlucky. Could he? So maybe go to Lloyd first because he sort of watched the game fresh today. Could he have done things differently? Could a different approach would that have worked better?
I think it's definitely not an easy matchup for him, but it's not to say it's unwinnable. I was thinking through, as you were saying earlier, Ben, you had a really kind of good day with matchups and things just kind of went your way. I think that's true of anyone who's ever done well in a tournament, right? No one's ever come out of a tournament and won it and has not been lucky somewhere, whether it's dodging bad matchups, whether it's getting the critical role at the exact moment. And I think looking at the mistakes in this, Ben made one, which was the rotate that stressed Nom, which was that kind of a bit tired, bit overcautious, not quite trusting yourself. And it took Nom out of the fight for probably 6 or 7 rounds in the end, but you didn't get punished for it because you were far enough ahead at that point. It was okay. And then Dom made, I think, probably 2 mistakes in this game. One was the barrel roll from Whisper, well, actually putting Whisper into that place where he barrel rolled and then only had one decloak option, which made her predictable. So Dom, I think, made one mistake later on. I forget what it was off the top of my head, but
I think if we
made a mistake and one person got punished and one person didn't. But I think they happened at different points, right? Dom's mistake was at a crucial point, and he really got punished for it. And Ben's mistake was minor, and at a point where he was about to take off, about to kill Soontir and go massively ahead in the game.
I wonder from Dom's approach whether the turn Soontir turned in and got himself in trouble with the iron cannon, although it was unlucky to take it and he should have been fine in that position. I wonder whether the more kind of high percentage play was to take him around the edge of the board for one more turn, get him genuinely behind Ben's list. Because obviously what you worry about there is that Ben turns in on Whisper and Duchess and Soontir's out of the game for a turn. But I think in the position they were in, they were never likely to take too much focus fire. I think Boba would have found it hard to get at Whisper, and I think, with hindsight, that was maybe the way to go. I think the other thing to kind of coming out of it that I've been thinking about is like, how do you approach Nom? Well, we said you can't really shoot at her with aces. I think that's true apart from Nom, unless you shoot them all at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at range 2, with all 3 of your ships, Dom's rolling 9 dice into 6. You're going to do, and actually that is a damage race you can win. Now, that's ignoring the other 2 ships on the board, but maybe in the future Dom could look back and go, I don't know what was going through his head, but possibly he's either underestimated the threat that Nom poses, or at least not had a plan of how to deal with that. And so maybe actually ensuring that all you get all guns on Nom in the early game and punch him hard for that initial Dengar damage that you're going to take is the way to deal with it, rather than leave him rolling around. I also think, and this is we've all said Dom's a very good player, and this is with the benefit of hindsight, I think once Nom was stressed, that Dom did you a favour by pursuing with Duchess. And gave you shots on those first 2 or 3 turns where you were kind of drifting aimlessly. Had he, as we've mentioned a number of times, had he drawn his list back together, had he brought Duchess, towards the bottom of the board edge on that turn after she'd taken the 2 damage, brought her back together with Whisper, then Dom probably could have got himself a couple of rounds of 2v1 fire against Boba whilst the rest of your list was sorting itself out. And that might have been enough to swing the game.
I think that's a hard thing that it took me a long time to learn to do that, which is like be willing to disengage and then re-engage. So especially when you're behind, right? Because you feel like I need to be doing stuff right now. I don't have time to get this and this and this. So, but you know what? Like, so disengaging with a Fang or disengaging with a Duchess, they're so maneuverable. You'll be back in 2 turns anyway. So I think it's so easy to sort of be like, I must keep pushing.
Which is a kind of a theme of this game, right? Is sort of you have time to get a good approach. You don't need to keep, once you've engaged. And actually, it's a really nice example because you both spent a good few turns getting a nice engagement, but then I feel from both of you, once you were in that engagement, you kind of stayed in it at all costs. Whereas actually, you could just have easily flown off, turned around, got another nice engage, and maybe got a slightly for you either a slightly quicker win, or for Dom maybe a bit more of a chance in the game.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of how quickly I stopped the camera after the end of this game. And so with the final 3 minutes, I think I'm going to take the opportunity to thank everyone for watching, assuming that anyone has. To thank Ben for coming on and being kind enough to let us, one, film the game, and then two, sort of sit here and listen to us criticise him about his choices during it. And to say that, as I said at the start, there's hopefully going to be the first of a series of these games. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to do all the classic YouTube stuff now. I feel like I'm a young person. Please like the video if you did like it, but more important than that, comment. It's early days for us, so if you've got any advice, anything you'd like us to do, any bits of the commentary you found interesting or less valuable, let us know, and we'll take that advice on board. Myself and Lloyd are going to be doing a few of these, both practice games and at our local tournaments, but as I say, more with a focus on a kind of tactical analysis of matches rather than giving you a kind of story of a whole day of a tournament.
And yeah, I think based on how today's gone, I expect to see Ben back on stream again pretty soon.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun. It's fun to looking back at your own play is actually really good way to learn as well, right?
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah.
I didn't remember those barrel rolls, so it's like little things like, oh wait, yeah, being able to review it's quite valuable.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough. I think I've only been on stream once or twice, but definitely the kind of, if you could get over the desire to not be too narcissistic, watching your games back is really valuable. Really getting an idea of what the commentators thought of what you were doing, seeing the points at which, for me, one of my major weaknesses, forgetting triggers, and I've got to sort of watch through my hands as I kind of forget trigger after trigger after trigger. But it's a useful learning experience to go through. And so just to round it up, Dom here, trying to the last, desperately trying to score some points and avoid the humiliation of the 200-0. I think we can all agree at this point that it's not deserved.
No. It should not be 200-0 at all.
The amount of evades Ben's rolled has been prodigious.
How dare you?
Yeah, and I kind of
perfectly average.
Yeah, clearly stealing them off Soontir in the first turn and using them to great effect. And Ben coming in here trying to close down Whisper.
Look at that Nom doing like quite a good efficient move. Finally.
Yeah. Finally worked out the jump master dial. And the Zealous Recruit, who I think has taken one shot all game.
Who cares though, right? Like, I mean, in a different game.
Maybe two, to be fair.
But clutch shots, right? Put a wounded pilot into Whisper.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's when it counts.
Get out of here, Fenrau. You're not worth anything. This guy's. I think I just do like, oh, this will be more fun. Let's do the Maniac Talon roll. Just.
Oh, this is absolute confidence here in display, right? This is.
I have.
No, I think I said to Dom, it's like, this one's for you. Like, it's just.
And so,
and presumably Dom is going to continue to barrel roll. Yeah, 100%, right? And this is the thing, right? This is a good habit, right? Like, it's meaningless. The game is over, but he's playing
classic
the way
Imperial Ace coward play here.
Disgusting.
And actually got himself in not a bad position. Range 3 from the 2 incoming shots, maybe not even in range of the Zealous Recruit and arc dodging Boba. Doing the right things as he has been all game.
Absolutely.
And we'll see if he gets some justice and scores some points.
We say like Dom, like it's not gone well for him, but I think you mentioned at the start, right? Dom is a player who went top 16 at Worlds.
At least, I think
poetically so. Is a blank out there into a focus that Ben needlessly spends the force to change into a that's the end of the game. So thanks for watching, everybody. We will roll out the final few shots here. See if Whisper can survive.
Get out of here, Whisper.
And he cannot. In that final round, complete injustice. We end the game. Cool.